Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We have a very, very special guest. Her name is Nirit Harel. She's the CEO of Impact Manhattan. And Nirit is a veteran of an Israeli startup environment with over 20 years of turnaround marketing and management experience, positioning ventures for growth, public offering and acquisitions, including MRV Communications, which subsequently reached a valuation of over $5 billion. The NASDAQ ticker is MRVC. And Nirit has an extensive experience negotiating partnership with world leaders in the European Framework Program, Horizon 2020, winning and managing a multi-year European Commission technology development bids for the world's most established and promising innovators. Nirit is instrumental in launching and establishing a diverse range of tech, impact, and nonprofit ventures in new markets in 60+ countries, and frequent speaker in the subject of innovation, women leadership, gender equity, and triple bottom line. I'm so excited to have you on, Nirit, today, and I'm excited about the conversation, about the benefit and resources that you're going to share with us, and most importantly, your experiences and your journey.
Pleasure to be here, Adam. Thank you very much for inviting me. I loved what did it for me was the name of your podcast.
Uplifters, yeah.
Uplifters is wonderful. And we always have to be looking at the positive and how we influence one another for the better, because we can all make one another better, can't we?
Yes, absolutely. It's a matter of perspective where some of us might go through challenges and obstacles and maybe difficult times in life or in business. And so the discovery and the exploration of what's the opportunity behind us is something that is really near and dear to my heart, just going through my own journeys and exploring the challenges. And so that's
especially this year. So thank you so much for including me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your journey, about the good things, the less good things that happened in your journey, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, I'm an Israeli Portuguese American, so that already makes me a citizen of the world. I'm very interested in diversity and knowing people and learning from people wherever I can. As I grew up in California to Israeli parents who were in school at UCLA, so I'm a second generation Bruin. Always very much involved with people and was a teacher. When my friends were flipping burgers in school, I was translating films and working on curriculum in values and social action and teaching kids what it means to act on their values. And I think in many ways that's come full circle for me. But always been very interested in writing and communicating, getting to know people, and a genuine love of people. And I think that's really, when you look at my resume, sometimes it looks nonlinear. But that's actually an ongoing theme, is, taking people, because that's the only thing you really take with you. And that's what I've learned in mentorship and so on. But I was privileged to really to move to Israel, quite young. I fell into the high-tech business completely by accident, I would say, although I don't believe there are accidents in the world. I'd met someone who was really very influential in the Israeli technology space, Steph Wertheimer, whose name you may know, who built the Kfar Vradim tech park in the north of Israel, and whose company Iskar was sold to Warren Buffett as his majority stake in investment in Israel. And Steph at the time had said to me, if you're not in marketing, you don't count. And I thought that was a very interesting statement to make. And at the time I spent 9 years in college, and I thought I wanted to go into journalism. And my father always told me that I was studying to find out what I didn't want to do. So I've been very, very fortunate to study many things and figure out many things I didn't want to do. But somewhere on the way, really enjoy that and take things from each of these. And I took that really to heart, because I realized that as someone who had grown up in the United States and moved to a place where everything was focused on export, Israel is a very small country. So, when you're talking about 9 million people, even less than, you're not talking about a large market, and everything is positioned for export. So as it turned out, the English language and the communication skills that I had from a young age, even as a student leader, were very useful in that environment. And really the most dynamic place was technology. So I found myself sort of in the basement of a Tel Aviv office building, breathing the same air as everybody else, without windows, and but in the right place at the right time as one of the very few women in management and very few people doing marketing. And unbeknownst to myself, doing investor relations and positioning this small company for sale to NASDAQ traded companies. It's actually a very interesting, I don't take you too much on a tangent, but there was a very interesting phenomenon at that time, which was the early 90s, which was, and today it doesn't happen, of course, but American companies that were very well managed would come in, and for $1 million or $1.5 million, they could buy an Israeli startup. Today, we don't sell so early. We're trying to become a scale-up nation. And it was brilliant because for $1 million or $1.5 million, you can't even build an infrastructure. And here they had existing infrastructure, existing salespeople, and all they had to do was start to flow new product through. So the next thing I knew I was a NASDAQ traded company with 2,000 or 3,000 employees that had no marketing, which was my great luck. And, hopefully later we'll talk about mentors, but that's where I really found my first real mentor who believed in me and said, hey, why don't you run global marketing? And we're going to buy all the competition and rebrand and relaunch and rebrand and relaunch. And, Adam, I'm sure that you had the same experience, but when you're young, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And so in that wonderful sort of passion and confidence, I ran ahead, and now I have no idea, as like many other things that happened in my life, how that happened. It's momentum, inertia.
It takes a lot to create and uplift something like that and make that operate in a way that successfully, right? So what are some of the obstacles and maybe some of the things that you went through and you thought was very stressful at the time and you overcame that?
I think, it's funny because some of the things that I looked at as a disadvantage at the time, now I see as an advantage. For example, having worked in the startup environment, there were a couple of things that were really unique. That were a very important part of my development. I'm not sure it makes it so easy for people to work with me because I'm so agile that, sometimes people need a lot more structure. But, the Israeli startup environment is very known for being flat. We don't really have pyramids. And a lot of that comes from military culture, that says just because something isn't your responsibility doesn't mean it isn't your problem. And so you get groups coming together regardless, especially in the army, regardless of where they are, people step in and help each other, right? And they all feel responsible for solving a problem. And so we don't have the hierarchy. Things get done a lot more quickly. People are very down to earth. They're encouraged to, I don't even like to say the word fail, but they're encouraged to try things all the time, even if they don't work, right? Thomas Edison said, I've never failed. I've tried 10,000 things that didn't work. And so the entire Israeli concept of innovation is built on this, because if you're afraid all the time of failure, you don't take risks. And so at the end of the day, if you're somebody who tried 10 different companies and you failed, you're that much closer to succeeding as far as we're concerned. And so it's really the person with the most scrapes on the elbow that people want to invest in. So that was one thing. The second thing that I think became really important in my development was that because this is not a very structured environment, people wear multiple hats. So the job description is such that it's really hard to duplicate in other places, which is why I ultimately became, self-employed. What the Jewish mother considers the entrepreneurship. Entrepreneur is another word for unemployment, right? Because if you
right. Unemployed CEOs, right? That's what
right. So we become entrepreneurs because nobody can work with us, right? But and I think that story, not that I'm putting myself in the same bucket, but you can see that story again and again with the with the Steve Jobs and so on and the Bill Gates of the world. They become self-employed because they're impossible to manage. But because I was in this position where I was looking at things from inception to creation to launch and so on, from coming up with a product, naming it, branding it, launching it, communications, internal, external, analyst relations, all of the marketing collateral, and then 3D marketing, which is in the form of events. Nobody has that in one job. And so unless you create it for yourself, you either have to take a slice of that process, which I tried to do. And luckily for me, I got so bored that I ended up starting my own business, or you have to create it. So that's really been, those are two themes that really have, but the challenges, I think anyone who's dealing with gender or minority, there's all kinds of challenges along the way. I haven't felt them by and large in the high tech world, where it's really a man's world in many ways still. I've been fortunate. So I've had very few of those situations.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about what it means to be a woman in a man's world, and how you came through and what you're doing with it. But a lot of people look at leaders like you and they think to themselves, oh, they're different than us. They don't have any fears or anxieties or fear of failures. But what can you tell people that maybe are dealing with some of these things and are afraid to fail or get that experience or take that venture, and maybe because they don't have knowledge or experience currently?
I have a terrible fear of failure, but and I also sang growing up, so some of that stage fright, conquering stage fright, I think was really helpful to me in terms of performance anxiety. But I think I found that the fear of failure comes from things that I'm not confident enough that I want to do. If I'm passionate about something, I will take it and I will run like my life depends on it, because I'm so excited about it that I don't really see the obstacles quite as much. So, in those situations, for me, if you're not doing it, you don't want it enough. And I feel it that way. My biggest fear of failure was in the entertainment world. And I can tell you today, as someone who sang professionally, did musical theater, had an album out, had a film done, that I wasn't committed enough. If I was prepared to eat bologna sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and pizza and live in my car, and that's what I would have done if I wanted it enough, then we wouldn't be here today, because I'd be somewhere else. Yeah. So if you're afraid of it, you most likely don't want it enough.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you is the commitment level. And then really, I'm also hearing taking 100% responsibilities either way it goes, right? If we're responsible for the fact that we will succeed, and we use that energy of fear of failure, anxiety to propel us upward, and also that commitment and the purpose that is bigger than the fear, which allows us to really establish and accomplish things on a higher level.
I try to do things that I feel I can't not do.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody said to me, and I've never been this successful, unfortunately not as successful in life as in my professional life, but somebody said to me that you marry someone who you can't see yourself living without.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's how you ought to approach the passion in your professional life. Can I not do this? Will I be able to sleep at night or live with myself if I had this amazing passion and burning in my belly and I didn't follow that? I have my next 3 businesses already mapped out in my head.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with YPO, and what does that entail, and what do you want to accomplish through that?
YPO is a really special community in my life. I mean, those are my people. And I think it's filled a place in my life that I didn't expect it would fill. I'm part of the 7%. YPO is only 7% women. And so it's funny because I told you before, I didn't feel like a woman in a man's world until I came to YPO in some ways. And it's really helped me to understand that dynamic. And as I see the community evolve, I see the concern and the way that they work to embrace a new reality all the time and adjusting to be better. That's really a community where we when I talk about leader among leaders, I went there. I didn't go there for professional reasons. Many people go there for networking. For me, I really wanted an environment of smart people that would challenge me intellectually and be my friends. I hadn't had that since business school. And so I think the expectations were very different, but the place has a culture, we're more and more as entrepreneurs developing a culture of experimentation, but very much of a culture of empowering and enabling people to do great things. And so I've really had opportunities there that I couldn't have in other places, where I've said, I have an idea, and they've said to me, go, and so I've been able to do amazing thing with the most amazing people in my life, which is an amazing gift. I mean, most of my tenure at YPO has been in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Network. And up until my chairmanship, there were no women on that board besides me. And now we're full gender parity. The organization is just doing incredible things to move forward, especially in an age of COVID where we can't meet face to face. But they're my family, and they're a very, very special place. I was lucky to be honored as a regional honoree for the Hickok Award this year, which is their Distinguished Service Award. And it's one of the great joys for me, not because I need another award, but because those are the people that I love and respect most in this world. And the fact that they felt that I was, oh yeah,
Wow.
that I was someone who deserved that is very, very humbling.
That's wonderful. Tell us a little bit about the transition you had. You were in a corporation, right? And now you're running your own business. You're the CEO of the company. So what was that transition from a corporate structure into what you're doing today?
Well, I've been back and forth quite a number of times. I mean, I think, yes, I went from a corporate structure where we grew a startup into quite a large entity. I went to business school. I ended up in a small PR firm, medium-sized PR firm, which luckily I was so miserable at that 10 months later I became, self-employed again. But I've come full circle. I went through a period of enormous growth. Impact was launched in the technology bubble. So if you can imagine naming and launching and taking to market a dozen companies that each month in conjunction with venture capital in early stage, it was a real sandbox and an amazing time to be doing that. And the company grew, but I found myself living in Israel and making a transition there and helping to grow a company there, having to do, as you mentioned, with the European Framework Program at the time, but technology development bids in the European Commission. And many of my changes have been geographic shifts. So I've had to sort of look inside myself, who I'm going to be in the new iteration of the new place that I'm in for personal reasons. Found myself back in the States, and thought, okay, well, I'm here. And so what am I going to do with myself that's going to matter? And at that time, Maccabi World Union, which was a large sports organization, global sports organization, was looking for somebody to build their infrastructure in North America, which was a great privilege. And what I found at the time, which was fascinating, it almost doesn't matter the size of the organization. It matters what your role in it and your ability to drive change is. The perception is that in large organizations, it's a big ship. It's going to take a lot longer to make any change. And I think that's true in most cases. But when I made a one-to-one comparison between nonprofits and startups, I found that they had very similar challenges: short time to market entry, diminishing funds, never had enough money, small passionate teams that were often mismanaged. And I thought, I've spent all this time launching and scaling companies. What would happen if I took corporate skills and I applied them to something that matters to me? And, I've said this often, and I have to quote, it actually comes from a YPO friend of mine. Nonprofit is often it's not the best term. It's misunderstood because nonprofit, of course, is a tax status. It's not a business model. So, when we're working with purpose-driven organizations, you still have to make money, and you still have to be profitable, and you still need to be sustainable, and you still need to work like a great company. The difference is what you do with what comes back. And so I still get the chills when I think about what that felt like, taking real business skills and applying them to something that matters to me. And that's sort of what I've carried. It's made it very difficult to go back to this amazing, exhilarating feeling of building large corporates, helping people to make money. It just has to matter. And I think we all later in life, I think I may be a little older than you, Adam. So in my old age, I've discovered that I need to do things that really matter to me.
Well, you're super young, considering the fact that we say we wish each other till 120. You're not even to half life. so
I'm also not Moses, so let's keep the expectations in perspective.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about your biggest mentors. What are some of the important lessons that you learned from them, and what do you want to give other people in terms of inspiration and empowerment and lessons?
That's such an important question. You know, I think people really underestimate the importance of mentors, particularly women. We don't do that. We don't like to impose on others, and we don't ask for help. And we don't want mentors. If we want them, we don't know how to request that help. I had two great mentors in my development, I think. And unfortunately, they're both men. I mean, I say that as I'm very blessed to have had these men in my life. I'd like to see more and more women mentoring, because I think young women might see themselves in those women and stop feeling as if they have to emulate men in order to be successful in the workplace. And so one of these was at Galcom, then NBASE, then MRV, right? And I have to give a shout out to Noam Latan, who's a blessing and who's back in my life after many years, who believed in me and said, you know, here you go, you know, run with it. I think you have very few opportunities in that, in that kind of environment to do that. And the second came during my tenure in the Jewish agency, where this is why I say big ships can be very complicated, but if you have the autonomy to build something new in an old body, it's an extraordinary opportunity. Natan Sharansky, who's actually a well-known Soviet dissident, was heading up the agency, and he and my mentor, Misha Galperin, sort of said, here, build a startup in an old body. And I built a startup in the Jewish agency, which allowed me to grow their reach into 60 countries in a very professional way. So those two turning points, one in the for-profit and one from the nonprofit world, I don't think those were a mistake. I think they really taught me some very, very important life skills.
So what role did your gender or your background or religion has played in your business journey, entrepreneurial journey?
I think I think that my religious identity is a very big part of who I am. It's very hard to meet me and not know that I'm Jewish, because I'm spouting all kinds of things, but I believe in living my values.
Yeah.
When Abraham Joshua Heschel says some are guilty, all are responsible, I live that. I don't believe in passing the buck. And so I think if the buck drops in my lap, I have to, something drops in my lap, I have an obligation to do that. And I think we have an obligation to do tikkun olam, to make the world better. So hopefully when we leave, it's a little better than it was. And for me, success is how many people's lives I can impact. I'm not taking anything with me to the grave. The only thing that stays behind is the impact you've had on other people. So if we can do that, that's an enormous gift. I think Mark Twain once said that the two most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day you find out why. And I think as much as I've been able to follow that why, and it's very much entrenched in Jewish values, it's been that much more successful for me beyond numerical, sort of quantitative ways. So, my gender, look, I mean, I think we all struggle. I think I'm still finding that. I feel very much that women traditionally are put in a position where they need to act like men, or feel that they need to act like men in order to succeed. I mean, the way we dress has changed, the way we carry ourselves has changed. I've read all the studies. The numbers speak for themselves, that women are great managers, but they also talk or speak to tension between being the good mother and being the ice queen. Yeah. And I can tell you for myself that I've really struggled with this, because at home I'm very much the good mother, and at work I'm very much the ice queen. And I think my goal over these years has been to bring the two together and become a better person and a better manager, so that I don't have to choose a persona that's different at work and at home. Men don't have that issue by and large. They are the same person at work as they are at home. And so when you're feeling all the time that you're struggling between being liked and being respected, my choice has always been being respected, but it's always better to find the in-between. You want people who respect you, but you also want people who love you enough to walk through the fire with you. And that's a balance that I'm still trying, to find. So I think it's not an easy thing.
What advice do you have for women leaders and in the entrepreneurial journey that they have?
Well, I think, I think the one word of advice is the same for every entrepreneur, which is to fall in love with problems and not solutions. I deal with founder syndrome a lot. And we see founders who invent something and they have to run and chase this thing because it's so amazing, but either it's not the solution that people need, or they haven't asked people what they need. And so, they say, don't throw good money after bad, oh, I've spent all this money, let's throw some more money at it. And so I think founders need to be very aware, and entrepreneurs need to be very, very aware of that. I do think that that the issue of mentors is a big issue. And I think the more that women can provide that kind of mentorship to other women, we're going to make our own community better and really elevate all of us. And it makes no difference if it's a man or a woman. I think we all need to understand that we have something, now when I speak on panels, by the way, I don't talk about, women in the workplace. I talk about gender, because I think there has to be an understanding that there are things that we can learn from one another. And the studies are very clear that women are exceptional managers because we manage with compassion. Yeah. So the women who are able to find that middle ground have a higher EQ and know how to communicate, and they have that soft skill side that we know now in studies is so very important. And so, they're showing 15% higher profits as a result. This is clear. The place that we are not performing so well is that we tend to take our work home, right? So we're stressing about it when we're not at work. And I think that out of 5 parameters, I think that was the one where we scored the lowest. So these are all things that I think women managers need to look at. We need to become better role models, which we are in general, and we're better at motivating our staff. So we really have to be true to ourselves and not pretend to be something other than what we are.
Yeah. So it's always been amazing to me, because my inspiration and my hero is my mom and other women that has been in my life that really opened the door for me to so many possibilities. So it's incredible. And today we see some, break of the glass ceilings and women CEOs and leaders, on eBay we had, and Google and other areas like that. And we need more and more of that. It's such an amazing thing to see it, and we need to see more of it. I know in my industry, the financial industry, I am looking for women leaders to have involvement and to be an inspiration to other people, because that's super important.
Certainly need more in financial services and also in venture capital, where women, I think, pull in maybe 5% of investment. Yeah, right. So we need the advocates that are men. Often I go to conferences and they'll put a panel that's mixed, but the whole audience is women. So that's the women are not the ones who are going to help us to make change. It's the men it's the feminists amongst the men who believe in the abilities of the women, and we do it together. We make each other better.
Yeah, I think the community and the world will be a better place. This is our sisters and our mothers and our wives that we want to see.
Look at the top leaders in the world today.
Yes. So, yeah. So, I know a lot of leaders that I talk to are very focused on community, are very focused on creating something better than they came to the world, right? And creating tikkun olam. What are some of the things that you want to leave as legacy, and the important things that you want to leave to the next generation?
That's a big question, Adam. I'm very focused on changing the way people think. I lead a trip every year for YPO. I'm so blessed. It's an innovation immersion to Israel. And the thing that's transformational about it is not learning about one technology or another. It's this immersion, seeing everything through an innovation lens, whether it's the food and the culture and the sports, whatever we do. it's transformational for people because it changes the way they perceive the world. And and it's really my favorite week of the year, because I've learned with some great people, there's this wonderful concept of the adjacent possible. It's what you know, but what can you do that's a little different that'll stretch what you know? This is kind of like what you know. So, oh, okay, I could do that too. And this is kind of like that too. So I can go a little bit in this, if we can all be prepared to find the adjacent possible, become more inclusive, become more risk takers, to see the world differently, to view our place in the world differently. If I've helped somebody to think that way, it's an enormous gift. So, and I taught for many years. I mean, until I was traveling, I was still teaching as CEO of Maccabi in Sunday school, because you see those shifts in children more than anywhere. Yeah. They don't know what they don't know. And so I actually have been thinking about going back to teaching, not in a university setting, but rather with children, because that's where you're really going to leave something meaningful behind, is if we can make each other better.
Yeah, it's really incredible. I've been volunteering with the Israeli American Council for a group called Eitanim, and it's you see the light bulb go in their eyes, even though they think they know everything, but they don't know what they don't know. But it's such an incredible light that goes in their eyes when they learn about entrepreneurship, and they learn about business, and they learn about technology, and they create projects in a real practical way. It's just an extraordinary thing. And who knows what the implications of it is going to be 10, 15 years from now, the things that they do in life. And it's just like a really exciting things to be a part of something like that.
It's terrific you're doing that. And I think, the difference is here whether they get encouraged or discouraged, right? Yeah. My niece loves baking cakes, and she bakes these amazing, beautiful wedding cakes and birthday cakes that could have come from any fancy bakery. Now, we could tell her, you'll forget it, make it for the family, but we encourage her to start a business. She's 14 years old. And, she's not going to become a millionaire from baking a bunch of cakes, but she will learn about budgeting and timelines and project management, and dealing with inventory and all of these things that you have to think about. In this case, there are health issues, and P&L. And so we want these kids to learn these things. Whether they're going to become, the next Jeff Bezos or not is irrelevant at this stage. We're doing the same with my 12-year-old nephew now. Does a beautiful job washing cars. Great. Start a detailing service as far as I'm concerned. So you can say that at 12 years old, you started a business, that you're an entrepreneur. It's the brain is a muscle. Unless we use it, it's mush. So let's challenge our young people to find something they're really passionate about. And you can always change your mind. This is the thing that I never understood growing up. I was in such a rush, and I was so worried I would pick the wrong thing. And you know what? I proverbially picked the wrong thing probably 5 times. I've studied everything. That's not nearly everything on the planet. But it's okay to change directions, and it's okay to change your mind. And, somebody said to me recently, Nirit, you've probably got 3 more iterations of yourself left. I love that. I love it. And that's what we have to teach our kids is okay. It's okay to change your mind and to take risks and to do what you feel is right, and trust your gut. I mean, I still believe in an education. There are some people who say, it's not important anymore. If Zuckerberg could drop out of Harvard, maybe if you're Zuckerberg, but that's another Jewish mother thing. You know why so many Israelis have Nobel Prizes, right? No. According to Yossi Vardi, it's the Jewish mother. After all I've done for you, you can't bring me one Nobel Prize.
Right.
So, there's some of that.
Yeah. You traveled the world, and you've seen a lot of things and experienced a lot of things. What are some of the things that you can share with us about those experiences?
The greatest thing for me, because I have a genuine and very, very genuine and very deep love of people, and a curiosity, is that we're all different, but we're all really the same. And it's amazing because I fall in love with every place I go. because it just, every place gives a new perspective. I've worked in over 60 countries. Okay. I've had the good fortune to meet people in all of these countries. And, I can come from Manhattan, where I'll open a bottle of soda and the bottle cap will get thrown in a bin in the middle of the street. And then I'll go somewhere in the off roads of South America, and there's some guy on the side of the road who's making art out of those bottle caps, and seeing something, giving a new life to that same item that I didn't think twice about. We are resilient and we are good. I mean, by and large, the people that you meet, אנשים טובים באמצע הדרך, you find good people everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're more good than bad. I was sitting in a cab in Panama, and at night I'm beginning to pack because I have to leave the next morning, and I have no passport. My passport with all my money had fallen under the seat in a cab in Panama. I thought I'm never going to see it again. I was calling the embassy in the middle of the night and waking up the ambassador, who really appreciated it. And the morning comes and the cab pulls up, and not one thing is missing from that wallet. And in fact, he ended up getting himself a job at that hotel, because I had never seen anybody so honest. So, given the chance, people surprise you for the better.
Yeah.
And there's really something to be learned from everyone. And, the other thing is I treat everybody the same. I mean, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, but we're all people first. And so, that's one of the great lessons that we've learned as a modern culture is, we all come from the same place. So, whether you believe in God or not, the scripture says that we're all created in the image of God. That once upon a time, that was revolutionary, right? Because the king used to say he was created to be the king. Yeah. We all, if you remove the skin, the guts are all going to look the same for all of us. And we all deserve that respect and more opportunity. So that's one of the things I've been really privileged to do in the nonprofit side of our work, is to go and help build schools in Africa, and to save the gorillas, and, to help with the equity, not for the gorillas, but for the communities around the gorillas, to have a better education and to have clean water and all of these things that we take for granted.
There's a lot of exciting things that are happening in the global economy and the universal economy. And, now you see a lot of decentralized finance and all those microeconomies that could be created. Do you have any perspective on some of those things that are happening, and any thoughts?
It's funny because everyone I talk to says different things, but what I see as an entrepreneur and what I've had the good fortune to speak on is the creativity. And somebody once said to me, don't waste a good crisis, right? The people who I know who have the most ingenuity are working around the clock now. They have this opportunity to create things while the whole world is on a pause, right? And they say that the economies that will do well are the ones who are investing in entrepreneurship and in infrastructure when the whole world is waiting. So it'll be very interesting to see as we come out of this. I think you're going to see a lot of incredible businesses launch. I think the ones that are going to that will remain are the ones that have innovated and changed and not waited for the storm to pass. The ones that fold, I don't want to speak for small businesses because I think they're in an unusual situation, especially in industries like restaurants and hospitality. But it's the ones that pivot. It's the survival of the fittest, and you're going to see some really strong companies. I really hope that what we're seeing is an economic boom, which is what I'm hearing from people, most people. Although yesterday someone said to me that I should brace myself because the stock market is about to crash. So I don't consider myself an expert. You're much more an expert on that side of the business, Adam. I'm more interested in venture capital, and at least in my ecosystem in Israel, we've not seen significant change there. People are still investing. There's a lot of money out there. It's just in different places, if you want to find it. So I'm really hoping that we can draw investment to some of these great ideas that people are incubating on their downtime.
What do you see some of the movements of investment or things that are investors looking at, or any specific industry that you've seen more movements on?
I have somewhat of a limited view because I'm very involved in the technology space. So, if you talk to me about what's happening, and I'm especially interested in technology that improves people's lives. So, But certainly, there's a lot of things having to do on the back end of technology, AI, data, that I'm somewhat involved in, where it doesn't, it's relevant in every economy and every environment. I mean, how many people do you know that are worried now about their networks and about the back end and business intelligence? I have a particular interest in how we use these technologies to fight hate, because you'll just see that hate activity globally is a little bit scary. And so those things continue to be, in Israel, we're still seeing people still caring about alternative energy. People are still investing in drones and cyber. People, these are ongoing trends that are completely unaffected, as far as I'm concerned, by the pandemic. And that's where I concentrate most of my efforts. I have friends who are running, large coffee houses, chains of coffee houses. I'm watching them, by the way, go and produce other types of packaged goods that they can send online. So, but that it's really not my industry.
Yeah. So Nirit, what an honor. I really, really appreciate you sharing your experiences and your journey. What I do typically at the end of every show, I give our guest about 60 seconds or so to kind of either promote something that they want to promote, share something that they want to share, and really inspire other people in the way that they want to inspire. So take it away.
Well, you heard me talk a little bit about a venture fund that I'm looking at raising. So I'm very interested in learning from others and vetting and finding the right partners to find the up and coming, high potential, high net worth, high growth, early stage companies that are in the area of intelligence, AI, and data that can help us to do some good on the back end. I've spent a lot of my career circling Jewish institutions that are now very concerned about anti-Semitism. We certainly don't own a monopoly on hate. There's anti-Muslim hate, there's homegrown terrorism these days, but we've never figured out how to move the needle. And so that's where I'm putting some of my efforts now is, can we get a fund and accelerate off the ground that helps these companies to still be very profitable in the other applications and business intelligence and media, but also in making this world a kinder place and in preventing hate and learning to be more inclusive and more embracing, love one another.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, Martin Luther King said, you don't fight hate with hate, you fight hate with love. And that's something that really has a resounding impact on me and I know on a lot of people.
Adam, what was life-changing for me a few years ago? I made a decision that being kind was more important than being right.
Yeah.
And I think when you live in a place that's constantly in conflict, you're constantly trying to prove you were right, but it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you need to look forward and not back and find a way forward. That's a way of love as best you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, workability is much better than perfection, right? And that is, if we can work on something, improve it, get forward, is better than being right or seeming perfect and that's something that is it was a big lesson for me as well. So thank you for sharing.
It's a pleasure. It's nice talking to you and finding that we have so much more to talk about.
Yes.
I hope to have other opportunities to hang out and talk some more.
Thank you so much. And tell us where people can find you, if they want to reach out to you. Who are
I think LinkedIn is probably the best place. And LinkedIn is a great place to reach out, and I respond to everybody. So if you find me, Nirit Harel on LinkedIn, I'm based in Dallas at the moment, but I'm of course everywhere and doing things in Portugal and in Israel and in New York. So give me a holler.
Wonderful. And we'll put all the links below the video, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. And leave us a comment and leave us some thumbs up, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds great. All the best, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you.